Do some TV programs out in New York, the Fox Business Network show, and he was so good at these programs, and he started, it was both good for TV producers who got, made good TV because he made good TV, and it was good for him because he started to realize that he could sell local issues and his local policies by using a national microphone, and it became his style.
And then, as many of our listeners know, he became a YouTube star through confrontational moments like this, talking about taking a bat to a 78-year-old state senator.
I mean, can you guys please take the bat out on her for once? I mean, here's a woman who knows she did it, yet she comes to you and is pining about, oh, my goodness, how awful this is, what a double standard, but she's the queen of the double standard.
And this to Star Ledger columnist Tom Moran, who had asked about Christie's confrontational tone.
Tom, you must be the thinnest skinned guy in America, because you think that's a confrontational tone, then, you should really see me when I'm pissed.
And so by the time he gives his budget address in early 2012, he describes himself like this.
Sometimes you may look at me and think I'm spoiling for a fight. Not all the time. But I tell you this, I'm going to fight for the things that are worth fighting for. My mother used to tell me all the time, Christopher, be yourself. Because if you are, then you're not going to have to worry tomorrow about remembering who you pretended to be yesterday. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is it. What you see is what you get.
Governor Christie from his 2012 budget address. If you're just joining us, my guest is WNYC and New Jersey Public Radio's Matt Katz, who covers Chris Christie. He's the creator of the Christie Tracker podcast, and now Matt has a book called American Governor, Chris Christie's Bridge to Redemption. And we can take your phone calls from Matt Katz on Christie, things you're hearing him describe from the book, also on the Republican presidential campaign in general, which Matt is now covering. 212-433 WNYC, 212-433-9692. So we went through a few of those foundational, seminal YouTube moments. You describe in the book the intentional cultivation and dissemination of the governor's YouTube image once they realized what they had. What were they doing?
First thing they did was hold town hall meetings, which were effective, obviously, in that he ended up being in front of tens of thousands of people in his first term. But at these town hall meetings, they brought an advance team funded by taxpayers that included an expert on lighting, for example, that would make the governor look as good as possible under the bright lights. They experimented with different formats and decided to go with the theater in the round, which allowed the camera to pan to get different angles and made a more theatrical presentation. And the next thing they did was build up a video unit. These were staffers who would go to every town hall meeting. They would sit in the back and they would cut clips that by the time I got to my car after the town hall meeting, they had already finished cutting the clips and emailed them out. Now, who did they email them out to? For years, I actually tried to find out. WNYC ended up suing.
So let's talk about that story. In fact, let me replay that clip from the inaugural address in 2010.
Today, a new era of accountability and transparency is here.
And that turned out not to be your experience when you were covering his YouTube image making.
That's true. I mean, transparency in general has been a incredibly difficult experience for reporters with this administration. It should be noted that only one email ever sent from the governor from his time as governor about official business has ever been released by this office, and that was only due to a subpoena. So transparency had not arrived, and given this email list, which we sought because we wanted to know, like, how was he making his image? How did these video clips become national news? When we eventually got it, thanks to a judge, we found that there were 88, I think, producers at Fox News, for example. There were media personalities from all over the country. There were political operatives. There were people who work in Republican Party politics. And we were able to see that, there are hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands of email addresses, and we're able to really kind of deconstruct how, this was not a totally organic thing. The fact that the governor of New Jersey was being talked about as a potential president of the United States in his second year. It was in fact a creation in part by taxpayer-funded aides in his own office.
What was the legal issue on getting this list released? What was their argument about this public information? Because this was the governor's office business. This wasn't a political campaign, which might be considered more private under the law. What were we claiming, and what was their defense?
There were various reasons that they gave. At first, they said it didn't exist because I wasn't calling it by the right thing, and it was. I think it might have been an electronic document that changed a lot. And I asked for an actual list, and they said, well, there's no static list. And then they were claiming that they were protecting the privacy of the people's contact information. So, for example, they didn't want me to get Megyn Kelly's email address, by the way.
Did you get Megyn Kelly's email address?
I got her producers, so I never actually got the email address. Maybe they hid that one.
You didn't email Megyn Kelly after that yourself. Maybe you should put her on your book publicity list.
That's a good call.
And you do list other ways in the book that Christie and his people have been more secretive than past gubernatorial administrations. What are some other examples of that?
They've taken budgetary information where reporters and legislators would be able to track the tax collections as they come in through the year. They've taken certain budgetary information off the website. They fired the biggest contractor for Sandy, this contractor that they had hired to actually give out millions of dollars in grants for people who were out of their homes. The administration secretly fired this contractor, and I say secretly is because his cabinet member, Christie's cabinet member, testified before the legislature after this contractor had been fired about the very program that the contractor was running, and never said anything about the contractor being fired. And then they obfuscated when I finally learned about it and tried to ask about it. So it's been in ways big and small that they've just immediately, their immediate reaction is to not give us stuff, or at least delay for months and months and months. We're still fighting for stuff.
Even his schedule, right, which most public officials just release, or his media schedule.
Yeah, his meeting schedule, who he meets with at the governor's mansion, who he meets with in the governor's office. This kind of stuff that's available to some degree by Governor Cuomo's office is not available in New Jersey from Christie's office. Right now, we're trying to find out. I was trying to find out how many days out of town he had spent last year, and I looked at all his public schedules, and we finally got the official number. That they ended up giving us an official number saying he was out of town about 260 days last year, but his public schedule only indicated he was out of town, maybe 40 or 50 days fewer than that, which means his schedule indicated he was in New Jersey many days last year when he was actually not in New Jersey. And that's something that matters to people, particularly when there's, for example, like a snowstorm coming this weekend.
And people are running against Rubio on that exact basis.
Christie himself was running against Rubio, made that argument against Rubio, yes.
Right.
And just as Christie's made the argument against Hillary Clinton that she hasn't been transparent about her emails, when in fact, he hasn't been transparent about his emails, and he deleted his own text messages related to Bridgegate, and she has her own email problems.
In fact, you reported in the book that even when he was U.S. attorney, before he was governor, he maxed out his travel budget multiple times compared to other people in his position around the country.
Yeah, he got a little pushback from the Justice Department for that, for spending money on expensive hotels and car services that was above the government rate. Travel for this governor, for whatever reason, has been his Achilles heel. If you remember Choppergate or Coptergate, when he took a state police helicopter to his son's baseball game, and of course the George Washington Bridge. This is, for whatever reason, getting from place to place is this weakness for him that's been something of a liability.
Matt Katz's new book, American Governor, Chris Christie's Bridge to Redemption. I'll ask you later why you put the bridge right in the title of the book. But it's easy to forget, as we talk about some of the history that you recount, that in 2011, these YouTube videos, and then Christie's national image, once he broke the Meet the Press barrier, were getting him so hot, he was being urged to run for president in that election cycle, 2012, in just his second year as governor. And when he decided against it, he talked about you.
I've given such great TV exposure to some of the local reporters. I mean, who's going to have Katz on TV now that I'm out of this race? Nobody is going to have Katz on TV. We won't be able to get on News 12, for God's sake. So
you've been on a TV show or two since then. You write about Christie's relationship with the press, like a time you wound up in what you call the penalty box. Is there an actual penalty box?
The secret of the penalty box. The key to the penalty box is not to exactly know officially if you're in the penalty box. You never get a note from somebody saying you're in the penalty box. You just find that suddenly your calls aren't really being returned. One time I did get a message from a source in Christie's orbit that said, "Not allowed to talk to you right now." And I said, "Why?" And I got no response. I've been told that that sometimes there are people in the penalty box and that there are Christie aides who are told not to talk to this person, but they don't even know why he's in the penalty box. So this is a somewhat effective, I guess, means of enforcing loyalty that Christie uses not only with reporters, but also with other people in his orbit.
And you write about the time the governor and one of his body men put you in the governor's car so he could chew you out about a story. This was like a scene from film noir. Can you tell us about that dark and rainy night?
We're in a Jersey diner, and Christie was campaigning for a congressional candidate, and he said, as he was walking by, I don't think anybody even nearby would have been able to perceive that he said something to me, but he said it very, very low as he passed by to me. He said, "See me after." And I waited outside in the rain for him afterwards, and as he walked by me to get into his SUV, he said, "Dan, put him in the car." And Dan was his actual body guy, the guy who carries all his wallet and his stuff. And the governor got in the front
Governors
of the SUV.
have people who carry their wallets?
Yes, and their hand sanitizers and their Sharpies, and they're also the official designator for iPhone pictures when he meets people.
Why does he carry Sharpies? Is it to autograph photographs?
He autographs photographs all the time, and then most people then sell them on eBay. It's a major part of the presidential campaign trail, is signing photographs of himself.
What do they go for, do you know?
I have seen them go for a wide variety of prices depending on how he's doing in the polls. And I was actually, this is an aside, but I was actually told a woman in Iowa brought my book to him the other day, and he actually signed it. I think that was probably
That's cool.
And that was the appropriate thing to do. Maybe I don't know if she had read it yet.
Don't tell her the author is supposed to sign
That's
the
right,
book.
right.
But
So,
you were telling me about
so he
this
puts me in the
dark
back of the
and
car,
rainy night.
and so I get in the back seat, and he gets in the front seat, and he turned around and pointed a finger at me and scolded me for a particular story. And the exact words he used, I decided was understood to be an off-the-record conversation, so I didn't reveal the back and forth of what we talked about, but he communicated his displeasure. And when I got out, Dan, the body guy, was soaking wet because he was waiting outside. The state trooper was in the car the whole time, idling it and looking forward very sternly, and all of the rest of the New Jersey press corps was there. They had watched Christie bring me in, and they realized that this was a scolding. So I think part of it was to kind of make an example out of me, even though I don't even know if they knew why I was necessarily in trouble.
I'm told now by the crack researchers on the Brian Lehrer Show producer team, Chris Christie signed a Time magazine cover going for $19.99 right now on eBay. So
Wow,
that's low.
Are there bids?
That's low. I don't know. I don't know if it's a buy it now
Right.
or if it's a bidding item. It's a buy it now. Okay, that's pretty low as autographs go. But so how much does he succeed in intimidating the press with things like taking you one-on-one in the back of his car and chewing you out?
I'd like to think that with me, he doesn't succeed at all. He certainly has intimidated me. We had an interview for the book where he, in using colorful language, threatened to kick me out of his office after I asked too many Bridgegate questions, and it wasn't scary like a plane crash scary, but it was scary in that he is a dominating presence and he is a powerful person, and I'm not afraid to admit I'm unquestionably feel intimidated, but I consciously do not let that affect my reporting. And I think the New Jersey Press Corps has done a remarkable job covering this guy fairly and toughly through the years. The National Press Corps has, for many years, I thought, pretty easy on him and was not paying attention to what was being written locally and covered locally. But I mean, my colleagues in Trenton have done just such tremendous work and so much of it I relied on in the book to kind of use their journalism to tell a complete story about him. So I would say it is not generally effective. I will say one thing though: when he commands a press conference in a way that previous governors did not. So he doesn't allow follow-up questions if he doesn't like the first question.
Does not allow.
He does not. He has various rules where you have to raise your hand. Corzine didn't have such rules, and in that space, I think his dominating presence is effective in moving the narrative along. He'll say, "That's a ridiculous question, Matt. Michael," and go on to somebody else, and that works.
So you have this whole book about Christie's political history, and the angle the Times picks up to write an article about is that the governor was candid with you about how much he and his wife argue. I think we have a clip of that secretly recorded.
That's something you've forgotten too, Ralph. You seem to have forgotten that I am a woman.
I forgot that you're a woman? How could I? You're always yapping. What do you mean I don't treat you like a woman? I treat you like a woman. I let you sew, I let you cook, I let you wash the windows, I let you clean up. Boys don't do that, Alice.
I'm sorry, Matt. I think that was a different couple. We'll have to issue a correction on that. But he does describe to you that they argue a lot and loudly, and it really reminded me of the honeymooners, and so much early on in the marriage that they needed marriage counseling and that they still, quote, air it out, to use the governor's words to you. How did that even come up with you?